Greetings, you wonderfully curious listener, and welcome once again to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to becoming incredibly well-informed without, having to wade through mountains of research yourself.
Uh-huh.
Speaking of deep dives, did you ever hear about the scuba diver who was also a stand-up comedian?
Oh, no, here we go.
He always brought his own pressure. I'm Hari.
Okay. Hello there, you keen intellect, Kimi here. And despite the jokes, today we are embarking on an exploration into a pretty shadowy and intriguing episode from the Cold War.
We are indeed. We're looking at the Portland spy ring, active in the UK between, 1953 and 1961?
That's the one. And using our source materials' detailed PDF excerpts, actually we're aiming to uncover the compelling intricacies of this espionage network. It's a story far more complex than the headlines might suggest.
Absolutely. Our mission, as always, is to extract the most crucial and maybe surprising insights, how they operated, who was involved, and the sort of unexpected way it all came crashing down. Gives you a real window into those hidden Cold War battles.
It really does. And right at the heart of it all was the target, the Admiralty Underwater Weapons Establishment, or AUWE.
Located on the Isle of Portland in Dorset.
Exactly. That's where they were trying to get their hands on highly classified research documents,
Now,
all about underwater warfare, which was, of course, a critical area back then.
okay, so let's dig into what they were specifically after. It's quite revealing. Development work for HMS Dreadnought, for starters.
Britain's first nuclear-powered submarine launched in 1960. A huge leap forward.
Huge. And also info on its Type 2001 sonar system. Apparently immensely powerful, thanks in part to that nuclear reactor. It could spot things much further away.
And beyond Dreadnought, the researchers at AWE were also working on refining submarine stealth tech and developing nuclear ballistic missile submarines. Really top-level stuff.
Definitely cutting edge.
Yeah.
And a little fun fact about AUWE itself. Before it was AUWE, it was formed through a series of amalgamations. Places like the Underwater Launching Establishment and the Torpedo Experimental Establishment got merged together. Shows how important this field was becoming.
Yeah, a consolidation of effort. So who are the actual players in this spy ring?
Well, let's start with the insiders, the British employees at AUWE, Harry Houghton and Ethel G.
Houghton's story is quite something. He'd worked as a clerk, then got posted to Warsaw, Poland.
Right, and that's where things get murky. He had an affair with a Polish intelligence agent, apparently offered secrets for cash. Then he comes back to AUWE in '52.
And here's a less-known fact. His own wife, Peggy, suspected him. She actually reported her concerns to the Admiralty multiple times.
Seriously. And they dismissed them.
Initially, yes. A real potential lapse there, you have to think. Then there's Ethel G. She was a filing clerk, but interestingly, had a higher security clearance than Houghton.
Giving her access to the really sensitive stuff.
Exactly. They started an affair, and Houghton eventually pulled her into the spying, telling her their handler was, get this, an American commander.
Wow. And the actual handler was not American.
Not at all. He was Konon Molody, a KGB agent using the identity Gordon Lonsdale, operating on a stolen Canadian passport.
Molody, or Lonsdale, had spent quite a while, 9 years, being educated in the U.S. before the NKVD recruited him in 1940. Shows some long-term planning by the Soviets.
Definitely. Lonsdale was the one collecting the documents, often on camera film, from Houghton and G, his cover, and export director for a jukebox and vending machine company.
Which gave him the perfect excuse to travel and meet other KGB contacts.
And another fun fact, the real Gordon Lonsdale, the Canadian whose identity was stolen, he actually died years earlier in Finland, around the early 1940s. The KGB just recycled his identity.
Shilling. Then you have the support team, the communication hub, Lona and Morris Cohen.
Americans, communists operating as Helen and Peter Kroger using New Zealand passports.
Morris fought in the Spanish Civil War, likely recruited then. And Lona, she'd been a courier connected to the Manhattan Project. Apparently even transported a full diagram of the U.S. atomic bomb.
And here's another less-known detail linked to that. Key information on the U.S. bomb reached Moscow just 12 days before the American test. Think about that speed.
Incredible. No wonder the Soviets tested their own bomb just 4 years later.
Right. Facing exposure in the U.S., possibly from the Venona decrypts, the Cohens fled, ended up in the U.K., and set up shop.
Literally.
Yeah.
An antiquarian book business in the Strand.
The perfect cover. And their house wasn't just a home, it was the comm center. They had a radio transmitter hidden in the cellar.
Sending information back to Moscow. And they used microdots hidden in the books they shipped out, plus one-time pads for encryption. Very sophisticated for the time. Lonsdale also used dead letter drops around London.
So how did this seemingly well-oiled machine finally get exposed?
It came down to a tip-off in 1960 from a Polish defector, Michael Golanowski. He mentioned a mole in the Admiralty.
Which pointed the finger initially towards Houghton. MI5 started surveillance.
And they slowly connected the dots. Houghton, Lonsdale, and eventually the Krogers.
A key moment was when they saw Lonsdale visit his bank safety deposit box. MI5 checked it out later.
And found miniature cameras, one-time pads, incriminating stuff.
Yeah.
Then they searched the Kroger's house.
Bingo. The radio transmitter, a microdot reader hidden in a talcum powder tin, loads of US dollars.
It's a whole setup. All 5 were arrested in January 1961.
The trial followed quickly, March 61 at the Old Bailey, all found guilty of conspiracy under the Official Secrets Act. Sentences range from 15 to 25 years.
Which led to the Romer inquiry, looking into how security failed so badly. The MI5 Director General at the time was pretty scathing about the lack of security-mindedness at AUWE.
Understandably. In the end, though, Lonsdale and the Krogers didn't serve their full terms. They were released in spy swaps later on.
Right, a common Cold War practice. Houghton and G got out early, too, in 1970 and actually got married.
And a final couple of, well, less-known points about the legacy. Under Yeltsin, the Krogers were named heroes of the Russian Federation.
Shows how valued their work was by Moscow.
And those MI5 files, released more recently, confirmed that if Peggy Houghton's initial warnings had been taken seriously, the whole ring might have been stopped years earlier.
A major what-if. The story itself has certainly lasted, though. Lots of books, plays, films about it.
It really captured the imagination.
So wrapping up this deep dive, we've seen this intricate network, the methods they used, blending old tradecraft with new tech, all happening in seemingly mundane places, and then the way it unraveled.
We shared some of those, surprising details too, like the recycled identities and the near misses in catching them earlier. Hopefully it gives you a richer picture.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener.
Considering how much technology has advanced and how the whole geopolitical world has shifted, what might modern-day espionage look like? What kind of vulnerabilities exist now in similar high-security research environments?
That's definitely something to think about. The game continues, just the tools change, perhaps. A compelling thought. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Until our next exploration, stay curious and keep seeking knowledge.